Welcome to Horror Movies with Dads. That's right, a very special episode for day 24 of 31 of these bad boys. That is 31 horror movies, 31 friends or family members, and 31 drink pairings. And without further ado, we're just going to introduce my father, Stephen Greene, who not only sired me, but sired a love of horror movies and weird shit. So, Dad, I think you can take a bow, and this is your fault.
Yeah, just blame it on me. Yeah. I mean, ever since I was small, I've liked to push the envelope of fear, and see how far I can go. And watching, movies or TV, I like to push the envelope a little bit.
I don't know if that's true anymore. Not a slasher movie. A slasher movie, you're running out of the room.
Yeah, but it's almost boring because well, it's like Game of Thrones. Oh, it's another battle, more chopping, which I kind of like better because at least there's a means to the end. Where slasher movie, it's just the slasher and the meat, and it doesn't seem to be going anywhere.
Well, sometimes they do, but that's another conversation. Sometimes there's more meat on the bone than just the meat that is on display. But anyway, that is what movie did you have me watch, Father?
I forced you to
Yes.
watch Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Yes, and this is a 1956 sci-fi horror film directed by Don Siegel and stars Kevin McCarthy and Dana Wynter. And yeah, Kevin McCarthy will be familiar to, I mean, he's in The Howling, he's in Piranha as well. And also, I'm assuming a million things that you can now mention right now, or no?
Not that many. He's always kind of a B actor, maybe
Yeah.
B plus, and this was a good role for him. Now, Dana Wynter is interesting because she's an A actress doing a B role. I mean, she was quite a big British movie star. She's kind of the Kate Beckinsale of her time.
I could see that. She had her own underworld franchise.
Well, they even alluded to it when she came back from England, and she's almost forgotten her American.
That's funny. Okay. Yeah, that's a fun little, okay. I didn't know she was too big for this movie. But I feel like it's Kevin McCarthy's movie. But yeah, before we get any further, Dad, would you like to have a drink?
Why not?
All right, let's do this. So Dad, I'll actually have you introduce the cidery. This is Eve's Cidery, and we are. Well, I guess I'll say first that we tried to have the same thing, but we have two different bottles of sparkling beverages, and we're going to attempt to mind meld through the Zoom and each impart tasting notes to the other person. So Dad, tell me, how did Eve's Cidery come into your life?
Well, Eve Cidery came into my life when I visited you at college. Uh, and I went to the local liquor store to find out because upstate New York's got a reputation for cider. And I went to the local liquor store in Ithaca, and there was about three major ciders that they had, and Eve's was the one the guy said hands down's the best. So I got a bottle of all three, so took them back with me to Washington State and enjoyed them both. And then I've been having kind of a relationship with Eve and Autumn through the internet, periodically ordering 6 to 8 bottles a year for personal consumption.
And yeah, you lent me, I think the bottle that you are about to imbibe, lent me. You gave me it, and I enjoyed it promptly. And now I am going to have a sparkling Perry batch 2020, and you were having the Autumn's Gold. Is that accurate?
I'm having Autumn's Gold night 2019.
Okay. Well, I'm going to open mine And I guess, yeah, you can open yours. Let's.
These are both sparkling. You know, Perry is obviously
Yeah,
made from pears, and cider is made from apples.
of course. This is. Ooh.
And, and Perry is made from special pears. It's not, you know, like cider is made from cider apples. There are cider pears.
So well, it says wild foraged pears. So that's good to know. Let's see here. You do yours first. Let's like it's too much at one. Actually, no, let's do it together. Ooh. So yeah, yours has more of a head on it, but it
It
quieted
disappeared.
down. Yeah, it did disappear.
Reminds you of the foam on the pods.
Oh my God, the foam of the pods is like one of the best parts of this movie.
Yeah.
Well, okay, let's take a sip and then that will take us into the seed pod.
Wow.
Wow.
How's the pear flavor?
It's really good. It's like biting into a big juicy pear, like almost like one of those ones. It brings me back memories of the Bartlett pears, like in the can that we used to have, but
Yeah.
in a good way.
Yeah.
But it's not sweet. It just has all that fruit juice.
And it
And
has a good aroma too, right?
oh yeah, yeah. It definitely. How is your aroma and tasting initial thoughts?
It, you get a little bit of caramel apple, maybe
Ah,
just a little bit, and then it's very dry, so you get that kind of astringency in the back of your, you know, in your teeth there. That's from the tannins and the cider apples. Cider apples have a lot of tannins. It's difficult to make a cider that's memorable if it doesn't have that. Like if you used a dessert apple or something that's just grown for sugar and for eating, they have no character. And during fermentation, it would hardly have any smell and hardly any apple flavor. It'd be more like white wine.
okay. I was gonna say slop, but okay, yeah. And Autumn's Gold is that the type of? I mean, obviously that's when it's harvested, but like, what kind of apples are we dealing with?
So it's got a 40% Acane uh, apples, 20% Frequin Rouge, and 20% Goldman Russet, 20% Tidyman's Early Worcester, and then 10% assorted bittersweets in small quantities. So it's a blended cider. It's not made from just one.
Yeah, not a single. That's
And
pretty cool.
all those apples are grown specifically for cider. If you bit into one, you'd probably spit it out.
You'd regret it because it'd be, yeah, probably bitter and not sweet. Yeah. Yeah, so mine's 100% wild forage pears. It's not a blend of different pears. And yeah, I wish, I mean, obviously I wish we were having the same thing, but I feel like I'm smelling apple because maybe that's the empathy, or like I'm like imagining that I'm like with you right now. I feel like I smell that on the nose in addition to the pear.
Yeah. One of the differences between pears and apples when you ferment them is that it's very hard to get the perry dry because pears contain two kinds of sugars and apples contain one kind. And the apple sugar can all ferment, but the pear sugar, it has a sugar alcohol in it called sorbitol, which is a natural laxative, by the way.
Oh,
You'll,
excellent.
you'll be happy to know, but it doesn't ferment.
Okay, so they have to do some fun things to make sure it's not super sugary, or and also that I'm not going to poop in the middle of this episode.
Yeah.
Well,
Well, they probably put it in a oak cask or something to raise the tannins up, so it's a little more bitter and not sweet.
yeah, I mean, I'm imagining that it's one. I've had the Autumn's Gold, and I know exactly what you're talking about. That astringent sort of, it's very dry, but like really nice. This is, I would say, it's not. It's like an off or like semi-sweet or a semi-dry, maybe. Like if we
Yeah,
were getting a wine, I feel like it has more sugar.
yeah, that's the deal. They can't get rid of that, so it will it will be more difficult to find a dry perry.
But it also isn't. It doesn't taste like regretful like most champagnes. Or it doesn't feel like it's not artificial sugar, at least, which is great.
No, it's all natural.
Yeah. And speaking of all natural sugar, the seed pods are filled with what kind. They have a lot of different sugars in those seed pods. But tell me, Dad, when did this movie find you? When did you first watch it?
I think I watched it first on something that was on TV when I was a child in the Bay Area called Creature Features.
Mm.
And it had a famous host by the name of Bob Wilkins.
Bob Wilkins is alive, all right. Some of his creature feature movies are dead, but Bob is alive every Saturday night.
And you can talk to your Uncle Tom about him. He's another one of Uncle Tom's folk heroes. Sat in a big, oversized rocking chair, had about a 9-inch long cigar and glasses, and he would just sit there like that, and he would rock in his chair and go like this and segue into a commercial or segue into the movie. But it was 19 early 1970s, late 1960s TV at its finest.
I mean, I'm definitely gonna pull up some Bob Wilkins and put him in here, because I think that's who I'm aspiring to be. It sounds like,
Yeah,
minus the cigar. Cigars don't do anything for me, but I think you need to hold it as an affectation. Whatever mine would be that'd be a fun one. And so, did this scare the shit out of you, or was it more intriguing? I mean, you said at
it
the
was very intriguing. Yeah, I mean, the scariest part, I don't know if we should jump to that yet.
we can just jump or
Okay,
whatever you want.
let's jump. The scariest part is obviously in the tunnel when you hear Dana's voice and it's different. She's obviously a talented actress. She changes the timbre and just the way she speaks. And she's not Becky anymore.
I went to sleep, Miles, and it happened.
She's not Becky, and we of course hunger for Becky as the audience, and as Kevin McCarthy does. That's the love interest. I mean, it seems like I guess they're both divorced.
They're both divorced recently, and they were very close before, you know,
It seems,
something happened.
yeah, it seems like childhood friends, and maybe they were lovers, or but like something, whatever. They drifted apart, but now she's back from England, and I mean, I guess the situation sort of
She was
escalates.
recovering from her divorce in England, and he just got back from a doctor's convention, but he'd just been recently, they'd both gone to Reno, which they mentioned, which is where in the 50s you go to get a divorce. And also where you can get married the same weekend.
Yeah,
Or
well,
both. Yeah.
or both if you can. That's a good weekend if you can do both. Well, were your parents divorced when you watched this?
Not the first time, no,
Not the first time.
no. They weren't divorced till 69.
Okay,
I'm
so it
sure
wasn't,
I'd seen this before then.
but it wasn't like that wasn't an angle on it, or like an added layer that you were experiencing.
No, I would say that the the helplessness of everyone working, to get control over you, and the lack of choice, and the kind of mindless servitude of these uh,
Beings.
beings.
Suddenly, while you're asleep, they'll absorb your minds, your memories. I don't want any part of it. You're forgetting something, Miles. What's that? You have no choice.
Yeah, I think that's totally scary.
Yeah, I think and it's very underplayed, or understated in this movie. I think like for most, compared to most 50s movies, I would like, it's not, I mean, it has its moments of being over the top, like with the bubbles and stuff, but that's like really cool. Like it is just sort of this insidious thing of, I mean, isn't this is also the historical thing is like Cold War, right? And it's sort of like anyone could be a commie, right? Is that sort of
Right.
the
That
idea?
there's at least three different parallel scenarios. Yeah, communism, socialism. Uh, they're going to take away your freedom of choice. They're going to make everybody the same. It's going to be this or it's going to be that. That was one idea. Then the antithesis of that was also happening was the McCarthy trials, and the people were not patriots, and were the other side is, if you're not one of them, you have to be one of us. So you
Right.
have to think the same. You have to either think this way or you have to think that way. But there's no in between. It's like the seed pods. They were working to eradicate everyone, because as long as there's still dissent, somebody can cut down the beanstalk.
Listen to me. Please listen. If you don't, if you won't, if you fail to understand, then the same incredible terror that's menacing me will strike at you!
The third track is, and the actors joked about it, Don Siegel more than Kevin McCarthy, because I think Don might have been more secure in where he was, because he actually was the montage director in Casablanca, so he had some chops.
Yeah.
Um, this was a parody on Hollywood executives, who they called pod people.
Ah, that's okay. So there's the Hollywood thing too. I like all those tracks. I mean, I don't like them, in terms of the all or nothing thing. It seems like obviously, it's 60 years later.
Be a
Whatever.
struggle of the studio system. It could have a labor thing with the pods falling in the pristine California farmers' fields, and they're just starting to thinking about labor organization of farm workers in California. There's all that.
And yeah, and it does start in the farms. Like that's where where the pods arrive, and sort of it then comes to the cities that way.
And that's what's terrifying. It's like, terrorists, they put a bomb, next to a 50-story building or this and that, and that's terrorizing. But real terror in America is the bomb next to the bowling alley on Friday night in bumfuck Oklahoma, or someplace
Right.
where the people. See, this didn't start in the big city, but it also threatened, or he tried to use one of the new burgeoning things which is also a really cool thing, is where he runs out to try to tell people about it. And where does he go? It's California. He goes on the freeway.
Alfred, listen to me, listen to me! You're not human!
Because that's the big way to get out of this, because it is a small town, or it's like, I mean, it's definitely a Bay Area town. It's like Santa Marina or something is like the name.
Santa Mira.
Yeah. And so that is, yeah, it's very interesting. There's a lot going on in this.
I mean, or there's enough room in it that you can inject your own whatever you want, almost.
Whatever you're afraid of.
Yeah, exactly. Your
Yeah.
own. That's not my mother.
I mean, and yeah, and I don't know if, I mean, you being on Zoom, is that really my dad right now? We don't know.
They're here already! You're next!
But I haven't fallen asleep yet.
He's here.
I was going to say, I told you before, I was like, this would have been a good coffee movie. I didn't realize it's very similar to Freddy Krueger in that you can't fall asleep and that's how they take you, which was a really interesting element. I didn't know how big a deal that would be, but it also feels like a corollary to sort of what is always said in terms of like politics or elections or activism. Like we can't fall asleep, or you can't like just sort of assume the best, or you can't fall asleep at the wheel. And it's sort of saying that we're maybe doing that in the 50s, and you know, I think we've done it often since, right?
Yeah, you fall asleep and you don't wake up. Yep, yep, yep.
Or
There
you,
was-
or you wake up and you're changed and you don't even know you are really, you know, like that's sort of what actually happens to us. Like we aren't replaced by Mr. Pod guy, but we have been sort of changed by society, or we are now one of them, right? Is that sort of
Yeah, that's possible. Yeah.
or like if you go to sleep enough, then you're just sort of indeed you've lost your identity or whatever makes you different. Is that sort of
That's it, or you're just sleeping through life.
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah.
you're not and that may have been it. There was a lot of euphoria. The war had been over for 10 years and America's, you know, king of the world, and everybody's got a job, everybody's got a girl, you know, life is good in Santa Mira, you know, everybody knows everybody's name. Very important. They're all individuals, you know. I don't think that I'm not sure. There wasn't enough interaction between the pod people when they discussed whether they addressed each other as their old names or anything. We didn't. They were just kind of like someone spoke and someone answered, and it looks like the ones that were turned the earliest might have been senior somehow.
Right. It's sort of by age rather than there is no, actually, I think that's cool that they never used any names or any sort of identifying features. They were just their replacements. And yeah, I think that it did feel like whoever's the first one that we saw turned was the leader kind of. But they are all sort of just like they're an ant colony, right?
Yeah.
And for an unseen queen or no queen, which is maybe, is that scarier, I guess, or
Well, I see that.
Where do they come from? I don't know. If they are seeds or seed pods, they must grow someplace on a plant, probably. And somebody or something wants this duplication to take place.
They reproduce by the pods, but once all the people are pods, then what happens?
yeah, what's their end? Like, do you just hang out and just all be the same? I guess.
And I don't know if I ever saw them eat anything.
That's true. But like, I don't know if they need to, or what are they, or maybe the eating is sort of like their reproducing is becoming us. Like that's their will to, or like the reason for existing is just to sort of replicate us.
Right.
So I mean, yeah, at the end of the movie would just be that they've replicated Earth and no one has noticed. I mean, that's the, yeah.
I mean, but it really is. I mean, as they described it, a world without trouble, without emotion. It's really paradise. And I just picked it up. Eve's Cidery.
Ah, there you go. Yes, this is before, yeah, but we are now having the apple or the pear.
There we go. If you want to know what I thought was the kind of the flaw or one of the problems at the end was, of course, you know, at the end, Dana Wynter falls asleep in the tunnel
Yes.
and she's converted. Now, her pod wasn't in the tunnel.
Right, because they have to be nearby the person to.
I assume the pod is what becomes the person and not her flesh and blood doesn't turn into a pod. So that didn't work for me necessarily. It's a minor flaw, but actually it's a major flaw.
I mean, well, yeah, because like once you pick at that scab, you're bleeding, and it sort of can filter through the whole thing. I mean, yeah, because
important for the impact of the story, but it's kind of like yeah, yeah, well, the guys running through the tunnel left her pod there when she was still under the floorboards.
maybe they just have enough pods all over. Like, I don't know if they have to be specific pods, like for specific people. Maybe there was just a leftover pod husk waiting, or they just, they've been strewn around the city. Or like, I mean, I know the gas station people put a bunch of pods in their car. Maybe they weren't able to get all of them, or maybe like, I don't know how he would have hit another one, but I think it's one of those things where
it's not so important. But
yeah, exactly. It's one of those things where like I'm okay with forgiving that because that's what needs to happen. Becky needs to change. It needs to be just him alone explaining the whole movie to us.
Will you tell these fools I'm not crazy?
And then their reaction at the end, the first reaction the doctor has is to bring in the government.
Yes.
And that didn't work because they cut him off. The first reaction, the doctor who's been listening to this whole story while Richard Deacon, the balder guy, is rolling his eyes, is, he's instructing the policeman that I don't know where he got all this power or who the hell that guy is, but he started, get the, give me the white, I'll get it. He was trying to do the same thing. And we immediately look, or a lot of these post-World War II horror movies, the doctors or the scientists provide a lot of the answers one way or the other. Sometimes they're part of the problem, but we look to the government to solve a lot of this stuff.
Great. Well, and does it doesn't end with us thinking that the people he's talking to are pod people, does it? Or is it's up for, I mean, because they could be, right? That was the ending that I expected from the very beginning. It's like he's going to say this whole thing and they're just going to, in a monotone way, be like, whatever it is, or he falls asleep, and that's what it felt like. Like he just basically wasted his entire life. Like that was his last gasp to tell this story. And then it doesn't matter because it's already spread to where he ran to, but I mean, that could still be the case, right? It's not like, I mean, going to the government seems like a pod people response.
Yeah. I mean, but the pods started as a rural uprising.
Right.
And so they hadn't, they, instead of going to the head of the organism, they started at the extremities and moved in.
From city to city, an incredible hysterical panic spread.
So what are the politics are kind of confusing or muddy because like you can sort of see it from either side, I guess, of being like, like the government is coming to save us and like we need to quell this uprising, but the uprising is communism. It is socialism. That's sort of what this movie is saying. That's bad.
That's possible, but it's also saying that you have to be careful who you're talking to in the government.
That's certainly true. I guess it sort of is basically, can you trust anyone? That's sort of what this movie is. And in Cold War times, that makes sense. But also, I mean, it's sort of it's very bleak. And like you said, because you can't fall asleep. There's no one you can trust. And if you've fallen asleep or like left someone for a minute, all of a sudden you can't trust anyone. You can't believe that they are who they are. And I think it's really interesting that it's always the people that you love, and it's sort of like something feels wrong about them, but you don't know for sure. And also that no one believes you. And that is always my biggest fear, is sort of like you have this thing and it just basically feels like you're the only one who's thinking that, or I'm crazy for saying it, no one's believing me. And there's no proof. You can't prove it because they look the same.
Yeah, I mean, that was he went to the wrong place at the beginning, but we got an insight into what the beings or what the thing was going when he started talking to the psychiatrist who was already a pod,
Yes.
more or less. And he's, his fateful line of the mind can figure anything except itself.
Ah,
Now, that was an interesting statement, now that I think about it, from a psychiatrist who would train himself to try to understand the mind. So this tells you that those guys don't understand us.
the pod people,
Yeah.
or this,
They
yeah,
can't understand. Well, I mean, they couldn't. Why would we want to live the way we
right.
are?
Right, exactly. Why would we want to have worries or doubt or be different from people? Because it's easy if we're all the same, right? Or it's
I mean, it's one of those things about humanity and about being beings in separate spaceships, spaceship Andy, spaceship Dad. And we know a lot about each other, but we don't know what each other's thinking all the time. These guys do. So there's that feeling of holistic. That could be comforting. And I think a lot of people like that. And so then we start pointing the bony finger at religion too, because that's what that provides.
yeah, that makes sense, because it's the idea that there is something comforting about knowing exactly what you're thinking, because then it couldn't be that Dad's like, oh, Andy, get to the point. What the fuck are you talking about? This is stupid. Why am I here? Which is, of course, my fear at all times, even if I'm not even saying it. And then, but then the reverse is, there's no, I mean, yeah, there's no conflict, but there's also no love. There's no interest at all. It's just us sort of sitting here saying nothing and doing.
Yeah. And the other thing was, there's nothing original. Old Uncle Ira's mowing the lawn. Looks like he's been mowing the lawn for about 4 or 5 hours.
That's true. And
that's what he does.
But is there something nice to being at the point where your brain's a pulp and mowing the lawn is fun? That's all you're doing. And it's just like, I mean, I go back and forth about that sometimes, of like, oh, it would be nice if I wanted to, just, yeah, be a lawnmower for my
exist. Just exist.
Yeah, and not have any other worries or I guess desire to do anything else. That would be kind of nice. That's like, it's sort of the inverse of anxiety, or the inverse of, I mean, it's calm and peace, but then you don't know. It's almost like you don't know what true freedom is either, in some way, in that scenario. But I don't know. Do I want it if I just like, if all I know is mowing the lawn? I don't know. This is weird.
Yeah.
I need your help. Something terrible has happened. Come on, you drunk. Get out of the street. Get out of here. Go on.
Peace and tranquility and some sort of clarity of thought can be useful for personal growth or for humanity, or can be harnessed because you can focus better and this and that. But if it's just vacuous and there's no there, then it's just merely existence and taking up space.
So like, it's a bad cider on the shelf.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no, well, why even make a cider? Why make anything if it's all the same? Because there's no, like you didn't achieve anything, or you didn't do anything new. I don't know. I think I'm stretching, leaping, but why not?
Fantastically powerful, beyond any comprehension.
Like you said, sometimes you welcome oblivion, to a certain extent.
Well, at the end of this bottle, it's one of those things. It's, if you have too much of something too, too much peace is almost death in a way. Is that accurate? Because or too much drinking is blackout, oblivion, mistake town. It's sort of like that. And it goes with the Eve having an apple thing. It's sort of like, ooh, once we've experienced pleasure, then we're going to be addicted or ruined, or now that we know anything else besides just paradise, which sounds boring, you know, then it sort of opens up Pandora's box. I don't know, a lot of mixed
So that's
metaphors.
exactly it.
Yeah.
That's exactly it. It's man's, you know, struggle for survival and growth. And if you took that away, you know, what are you going to end up with? You know, what are we going to? Everybody's a pod. Everybody's eating. Mr. Grimaldi's not growing food. He's not selling it at his fruit stand. He's dealing with pods. So what are those guys eating? I don't know.
I don't think there's anything to eat anymore. I think it's just sort of it's more of like a virus,
Yeah.
so the virus sort of just
Plays itself out.
right. I think the end of it would just, once they've replicated the world, then I think they just die out, or the pod just goes to the next world, which, you know, maybe that sounds like there's peace there, but it's actually the same thing that we do. We're going to ruin this planet. We're going to go to the next one, ruin that one, you know, and go on and on. It's sort of the same thing, although they have this veneer of like, oh, we're all the same, everyone's happy. Bullshit.
Yeah, we don't need a virus to do that.
Well, I mean, we create those too.
Yeah, but man's a virus.
Now wait! Right, but I take a dim view of watching my own destruction take place.
It goes into the utopia thing. Like a lot of sci-fi novels always, you know, we're always striving for that utopia or talking about it or dreaming of utopia, but then it always ends, it sort of goes to the Brave New World sort of space. And that's kind of what this is too, right? Like
Yeah, it's more of a, instead of a reaction, most of them are reactions to some sort of traumatic event. We can only save so many people, and we set up this semi-utopian thing that from the outside looks good, from the inside looks bad. Whereas this is survival. I mean, it's survival of another species at our not to our benefit.
right. Although it's trying to argue that it is, but then the argument is that we cease to exist, at least as we know it. Because I think Becky is dead, you know,
Yes.
at least, you know, the Becky that we know and care about. And I think, unfortunately, there's, it still sort of sometimes does sound appealing to like, okay, but to give up. But
Right.
yeah, but we can't.
So I suppose the other way to look at it is, yes, World War II is over. It's been over for a while. Korean War, you know, as I think it's just about over as well. And you can't stop being vigilant. You can't be complacent. You can't. Our place in this earth is fragile, and there's something out there, even if it isn't us. They used a spore from space to say this thing could just show up and take over the world, and so you need to keep your friends close, keep your counsel, and be wary.
Well, I guess, yeah, sleep with one eye open, all that bullshit. But it's also, I mean, sure, it's a spore, but it seems to me very clearly that, you know, it's arguing that the true terror, and it sort of goes back to what you said about the scariest thing is that a bomb could go off at any bowling alley. It's more that the terror is coming from within. And, you know, I think we've seen the last 20 years how it's, you know, we position it as the terror is coming from outside, but the terror is inside our country, inside us. And it's always been there. So I think that is sort of what this movie is saying in 1956. The terror, yeah, sure, it's an alien thing, but that's just the bullshit sci-fi thing to it, like have it work in the movie. It's more like, oh shit, the enemy is your neighbor, the enemy is your wife, or your dad, or whoever it is that you like lost track of. Or, you know,
on the contrary, the enemy is your government mandating a vaccine.
Yeah, if you see it the other way, and it is this us versus them thing, and this movie does really, it's a black and white film, literally, but it's
There's
black
no choice. There's
Yeah.
no choice.
and that is, I think, the scariest thing. You're right.
You're next!
What's an uplifting send off for the folks out at home? There isn't
It's
one.
happening. You could be next.
No, I think the send off is, having conversations like this with
Yes.
your dad, your uncle, your friends, your strangers, your neighbors, and having it with a frosty beverage, or
Yeah.
or not, whatever you want. Because dad, this was really fun and a worthy film choice, and as it gives me I guess motivation for the stretch run here. I got 7 more, so
Keep up the good work, and
oh, thank you.
just check in with your dad and your mom and make sure we're not ripe.
If you're not frothing at the mouth and becoming
Is that me?
the coolest little thing was that the guy had the cut on the hand. That was
and it was replicated.
a very small thing, but it was really well done. And that was when I was like, yeah, that's why this is a classic. But Invasion of the Body Snatchers, next time Dad and I will watch the remake, because it's also really good. But I think that will be for another vintage of Eve's Cidery, which is located in Van Etten, New York. This is to you, Ezra and Autumn and the fun Monster Kid children out there. So Dad, thanks again for doing this with me.
Oh, no problem. We'll do it again.
All right. Well, love you, Dad, and love everyone else watching this. I am doing it in part because of a fundraiser in honor of my friend through the Trevor Project. The Trevor Project is a nonprofit organization dedicated to helping LGBTQ plus youth with suicide prevention and crisis intervention. So please, there's more information below. If you can spare anything, that would be great to fight the pod people. And tomorrow in quotes, because it might be released an hour after this at this point, it will be, what do we have? I believe we are going to be talking about, Dad might know this one, a Hammer horror film. I don't actually know what year, but Twins of Evil, the follow-up to The Vampire Lovers, a film that either my dad or uncle got me and they won't admit to it. So, but it is, so we will see. I have a friend that I met at a restaurant, Diva Holiday, will talk to me about that tomorrow over some coffee. But yeah, I'll see you at the next phase of the moon. In the meantime, let's howl at the moon for the friends we miss, the friends we wish were here to see this. Ow, ow, ow,
Ow!